Okay, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you're watching from. And we do have people watching from all different parts of the world right now. Welcome to the Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar, the webinar version. My name is Greg Capolero, and I will be your host. The Niagara Hockey Coaches Seminar is an annual, normally live event that takes place in Niagara, Ontario, and was founded and is organized by Wes Wolf, Murray Nystrom, Wayne Chapman, and myself. However, due to the circumstances this year, we have switched over to a virtual format. At our live seminars, we do collect money for our local food bank. So today we encourage anyone who can, please donate to your local food bank. Make sure to check out our webpage, follow us on Twitter for all the information on upcoming presenters, as we will continue hosting these events during the month of May. The presentations are also available on YouTube, so please check that out. After today's presentation, we will have a short Q&A, so please post your questions in the Q&A box. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them, but we will do our best. These free webinars have featured some fantastic speakers with some great topics. Today is no exception. Our presenter has a connection to the Niagara region, as he spent 3 seasons playing for the Brock University Badgers men's hockey team from 2008 to 2011. He's currently the assistant coach of the Red Deer Rebels in the WHL, and now working on modern defenseman skill development in junior hockey. Here's Brad Flynn.
Hey, Cappy, thanks for that introduction. Thank you very much for taking time to come sit and listen to me. I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day yesterday, and we're all healthy and safe, obviously in non-normal times, but we keep doing our part, and hopefully we can get back to some normalcy sooner rather than later. As Cappy mentioned, I do have a connection to the Niagara area. I was fortunate enough to play at Brock for 3 seasons, made some lifelong connections, and was fortunate enough to play for Murray Nystrom. And Murray is a coach for me that really gave me an opportunity. I was playing Division III and decided that I needed a change, and without really knowing where I was going to go, Murray had an opening, brought me on with open arms, and he's been a mentor and more importantly, a friend to me ever since. And that's part of the discussion I wanted to get into, is the communication factor with coaching and modern defensemen and working with defensemen. Again, this will be my first time doing a webinar. I apologize if I'm a little bit choppy in certain situations. Just trying to get through it. So stick with me, and we'll get through this. We'll have some fun today, and hopefully, if there's one thing you can take, one small thing, I feel like I contributed. So please just enjoy it, and hopefully there'll be something there for all of us. Myself, my coaching history is brief compared to some, and maybe experience compared to others, and I'm hoping some of the information given for the people that do feel that I have a little bit more experience than maybe they have, or at a level that they're working with players to get to, it'll be able to help them there. So I've been a junior coach for going into my 9th season. 5 years I was at the junior A level, 3 as an assistant, 2 as a head coach. I've also been an assistant coach in the Quebec League with the Bathurst Titans. Mario Pouliot was my head coach, back-to-back Memorial Cup champion, and now I'm assistant coach with the Red Deer Rebels, and I'm very fortunate to work for and with Brent Sutter, and Ryan Colville, Eric Lodge, Kramer Barnstable. We have a great staff, and every coach that I've worked with along the way has helped contribute to this, and my development as a coach. So big thank you to all those guys as well. And with saying that, let's get into her, and hopefully I can get this set up right away without a hitch. Okay, so developing defensemen in junior hockey, and again, this is a lot of things that I've learned over my experience. A lot of it's opinion. It's not necessarily what we do in Red Deer. It's not what I've done in when I was a head coach in Corpus Christi in the North American Hockey League or in Bathurst. It's really things I've learned over the last 8 seasons and ways that I try to apply it now. And funny, looking at some clips or things that I'd done in the past, I look at myself and shake my head. And as a younger coach, it's one of the things that I've always had trouble with is looking back with players that I've had and feeling like I haven't helped them get to where they need to go or didn't give them information that I have now. And that's something that I've learned as I've gone along is we're only as good as the information we have at that time. And as we grow and we gain experience, that's where we gain our information. And that's really important because that was a tough part for me as a younger coach. So if that can help any of you other younger coaches out there, understand that the players don't hold it against you. It's what you know at the time and it's moving forward. And everybody thinks you're trying to do the best you can. And we appreciate the guys and girls that take the extra time to do that. So last year was a really interesting perspective for me as a coach. We had a young defense that I worked with primarily, and I'll say a lot of the words like I, but in reality, it's all we. It's a whole staff commitment. So we had a very young defense last year. We had one 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, 5 17-year-old defensemen, and a 16-year-old defenseman. So if you're not used to the major junior method or model, usually you have a little bit older defense than that with 1 or 2 20-year-olds, multiple 19 and 18-year-olds, and then limited number of 16 and 17-year-olds. There was actually a time last year when our 20-year-old was injured in the middle of the period, and we had 4 17-year-olds and a 16-year-old, or sorry, 5 17s and a 16 playing. We had 7 de-dressed, and the whole back end of the major junior defense at that time could have been a midget AAA defense and fought for the TELUS Cup. And fortunately, it was near the end of the year, and I was extremely proud, as well as the rest of the team, with how we played the rest of that period short manned, because those young defensemen really stepped to the challenge. And it's like the Navy SEALs always say, you don't rise to the challenge, you drop to the level of your training. And that was a real a proud moment for me as a coach, is that those guys stepped up. We kept the other team, who was a strong team at the time, off the scoreboard, but again, reinforcing those small details and how they can help you build your team. So the plan wasn't a revolutionary plan that we had. It was extremely simple and probably as basic as you can get. Create a solid foundation and help in different areas build that foundation that we can, as coaches, continue to build on as they get older. The challenging part with that is it's when you have older defensemen that you can rely on more often, those younger D, you can let them work through their growing pains. When they're put right in the fire like that, you want to help build their development plan, build their confidence, but you still have a responsibility to the team and the organization, your fans, your family, to win games, because at the end of the day, coaches are judged on wins and losses as well as development. So everything works hand to hand. So it wasn't we were trying to speed up the process as much as we could, without skipping any steps. And in saying that, one of the things that I did a lot last year is track the process, because it was a first time for me. I wanted to see how every player developed differently and how our defense developed together. By doing that, I used a lot of analytics, and I really dove into the finer points of every situation that our defense were put in, or I try to anyways. One thing on a side note that I learned from that is, like I said earlier, I should have listened to my own advice. Keep it simple. I should have just tracked the simple things. I think although my heart was in the right spot, I was so focused on trying to do all the analytics and analyzing and following what analysts are doing in the NHL and trying to get advantages that I overworked myself, and I wasn't as good as I could have been. I wasn't as fresh. And it's really important as coaches, just like players, you have to be fresh when you're doing this. When you're working with a defenseman, or when you're working in general, don't give up time at night. Don't give up sleep to stay up and burn the candle at both ends, because you need to be fresh the next day for practice. You show up, you're half asleep, you're cranky, you're irritable. You're not going to give them the same respect that they need as players, and you're going to be grouchy. It's going to be a tough working environment. So I found out with myself. Big thanks to our staff. They were unbelievable with working with me this year on that side of it. So build the relationship. Again, foundation work. That's the foundation of development for me, is building a relationship. You need a relationship with the player that you're working with. The science, as in analytics, it may have evolved in coaching over the past few years, and you may use it more often than it was talked about before. But at the end of the day, the art of coaching, to me personally, is still connecting to the player. If the player doesn't really care how smart you are or what you know, they care if you don't care about them. If you don't care about the individual, all the other stuff, it doesn't matter as much. So you got to connect to those players, and getting to know your players, time well spent. An example, when I was in Corpus, we had a fun little game called Under the Helmet. And what it was is 10 or 15 questions. It's up to your discretion. Random questions from anything from what was your favorite present growing up on Christmas to whatever, your biggest goal you've ever scored. And we would ask these individual players after a team meal in a private setting where guys didn't feel embarrassed. They weren't meant to embarrass anybody. It was meant for teammates, friends, coaching staff to get to know the player on a personal level. And it was interesting that the amount of players that actually enjoyed it and welcomed it, it was fun, because that was probably the closest group I've ever coached. And it was one of the things that we did a lot, and the feedback on that was good. So make sure you're also talking to parents, teachers, previous coaches. For an example, this year, I kind of went out of my comfort zone. I called one of the parents, check in, see how his son was doing with us. And his son was playing well. He was playing minutes. It didn't think it was going to be a negative call, which it wasn't. But one of the things was, I didn't see the player interacting during video like he was as engaged as somebody that loves doing video. So my first instinct was, okay, this player likes to learn more by doing. He likes to learn on the ice. When in fact, when I talked to his father and then ended up talking to the player about it, it was incredible how much he learned from video. And his process was, he liked to listen to me tell him, and then he liked to go back and work through it himself. So understanding different teaching methods with the players is important. And sometimes you have to go to their parents, because they know them better than anybody. They've worked with them and communicated with them and know how to get their attention better than anybody. And if you can build a relationship with them as well, it can help you get your message through to the player. Communication, and again, it's a recurring topic, but get to know the player. What motivates them? What are their goals, their mutual interests, their home life? How's everything going at school? Make them feel, say good morning, say good evening. I remember hearing about one of the things that separate Patrice Bergeron is when he was playing in the DEL. He'd show up an hour before everybody else with his coffee, newspaper, go in and stretch in the middle of the dressing room. Everybody that came in the dressing room, whether it was a staff member or a teammate or a volunteer that just had to come in and grab something, he was always there an hour before, stretching, having a coffee, reading the paper, said good morning, hello to every single person. That's an NHL player that was over there during the lockout. But again, it's just the type of person that he is. So Make sure you say hi to everybody. It's going to help build those relationships as well, and just know them as a person, not just the player. And that'll go a long way. Once you know the person and then you get to know the player, that can help you as well, because the way that I view a player might be drastically different than how they view themselves. And in an individual season and career goals, there can be a lot of discrepancy there. So make sure you guys get on the same page. I might see a player as an offensive defenseman. He might see himself as a defensive defenseman. And if you don't have that communication, it's a tough place to be. Situational feedback, asking questions. I love asking defensemen, what do you see out there? Because I see an angle from a bench, but I see it through a coach's lens. I need to get what the defenseman is feeling, what the player's feeling sometimes on the ice. I want to know the feedback. I want to know what they're seeing. Oh, excuse me. Oh, you know what? We have no time on the breakout. We have no time on face-offs. We need to talk about holding up more. Okay, well, I appreciate the feedback. Let me watch some of this. Geez, they're right. We need to start holding up more. We need to give them that little bit more time. We need to support the puck, different things like that. So get players' feedback. It's not just about you behind the bench, in my opinion. It's about asking them a little bit what they're seeing as well. Plus, it gives them that feeling of being involved in the process. Confidence is the mother of development. Confidence comes from trust. Trust is built through relationships. Relationships take time. That's where communication starts. But you want to build trust in your players. And to build trust, they need to know that you care. And that comes from the relationship. And then once they trust it, they're going to build confidence with it. And I know I can speak personally on this, is when I feel confident performing a task, I'll keep repeating that task. And for me, I like as a coach to give more feedback during, I should say critical feedback during practice, if there is going to be critical feedback. I think that there's enough external pressures in a game that one more person who they should be relying on for support in a lot of areas can't be on them nagging the whole game and being critical. I do think that it can't be all rainbows and sunshine either, that you need to give feedback, but make sure you're picking your spots. Can the player control it? Is it going to help the rest of the game? So for me, I like to look at the details that we go over constantly, or things that I touch on constantly during the week, and I'm making sure I'm giving feedback on that. I'll be honest, I don't expect our defenseman at major junior to stop Patrick Kane on a one-on-one. You got to understand there's going to be skill discrepancy. But if Patrick Kane attacks a defenseman one-on-one, and the details in the defenseman's game with, say, stick positioning that he can control, that has no effect on Patrick Kane's skill, if he can control his own stick positioning, it's going to give him a better opportunity to succeed. Now, if he gets beat where his stick could have been and that was all on him, then maybe I'm going to let him know. But I'm going to let him know in a way that will help him the next time, as a reminder. Right, that was a good play, or tough play. Let's make sure we got our stick on the ice. We're showing our watch. Threaten that puck. Good stick. Stick on puck. Constant feedback reminders, instead of coming to the bench and telling them the old school, wake up. You got to be better than that. You're better than this. Okay, I know I'm better than this, coach, but where am I better than this? Or how do I become better than this? So those are some situations for me. Developing the details. Trent Yanni, who I had the pleasure of coaching his son Connor for 2 years in Corpus Christi, extremely intelligent defenseman. And Trent, obviously, assistant coach with the Los Angeles Kings in the NHL. And he's been a big influence on me, as well as many other coaches, including my father, who coached a long time in Major Junior in the NHL, now scouts for Columbus, Mario Pouliot, Brent Sutter, Murray Nystrom, those just a few names. But Trent would always say to me, simple isn't easy, but it's effective. And when you're working with players, if you can keep it simple and you can get inside the player's head and make sure they understand that although this is a simple skill, it's effective. And I think it's more critical now more than ever, especially with defensemen. We see a lot more And this is no disrespect, and I think there's a huge place in the game for it, and I'm a big proponent of skill and offense, don't get me wrong. But I think that sometimes this younger generation, with how much is available to them on social media and YouTube and the highlights that they see way more highlights than we used to, due to the fact that everything, there's 24-hour sports channels, all those things, right? But they see a lot of the sexy, quote unquote, skill. And sometimes they got to understand that, you know what, there's not a lot of sexiness in most games that they think is awesome or sexy. That the game is played simple, and that those are used when needed. It's not the first gun in the belt that they go to is making the hardest, most skilled play. It's usually the simple play. So making sure the defensemen and your players understand that and develop great habits, because a habitual player is going to spend less time thinking and more time performing. That's why so many guys have routines. You don't have to think about it. You do it. And once players can add that, and you can help coach them into doing that inside of your systems, it's going to make them play that much faster. All right, so I'm going to try to speed through these a little bit quicker so we can get to the video, the fun stuff. The 2 focus points is going to be gap and posture. So there's multiple areas that you can focus on. All I'm doing is going to show you gap and posture as an example, and then whatever's important to you, take those areas and break it down to where you see it at the fundamental level. All right, there's walking the blue line for defensemen, there's breakouts, there's transition, there's tons of different opportunities to dive into this. I picked 2 examples. I wanted, like I said, simple and effective. I wanted to make sure that they were short, but I could also show you some details throughout the whole thing with it. So gap, I hear this all the time. I hear younger coaches or younger leveled coaches in terms of ban a midget, or I hear some coaches when I just walk through the rinks. My gym's actually at my rink, which is next door, so I get to see a lot of minor hockey now, and I hear coaches constantly yelling, gap, 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 gap. And the hockey schools that I've worked at, I've asked players, do you know what gap is? And I find myself explaining the definition of gap more often than not, which is kind of funny because you hear that word so much, even in minor hockey rinks, that the players don't necessarily understand what gap is. So it's important to explain this to your defensemen, so at least they're on the same page as you, because their previous coach might have a completely different opinion in certain definitions. So for me, ideally with gap, in most situations, you want your defenseman to have a tight gap. What's a tight gap, or gap in general? Well, gap is the ice that you allow the forward to have, that you're going to give them. So if you're playing a forward one-on-one, or you're playing a one-on-one against the opposition, you're either going to give the ice up in front of you, which means you're going to back off and be closer to your net, or you're going to give up the ice behind you, which means you're going to be closer to the puck. A tight gap would mean you're giving up the ice behind you. So you're telling that forward, hey, if you want to beat me, there's the free ice. It's behind me, but you got to go through me. If you're having a soft gap, you're saying, there's all the ice in front of me. I'm going to sit back closer to my net. You can play with all that, but you gotta come through me at some point. Most teams want a tight gap. I believe in a tight gap. I think you see a lot of defensemen that are intimidated by speed or by skill give a soft gap, and they're sitting back a lot. And in today's day and age, a soft gap, with how skilled forwards are and how skilled teams are and their attack mentality, it's going to cause trouble. Excuse me. What most defensemen don't realize is the tighter your gap, the harder it is for skilled players to keep control of the puck, because now they have to beat you with multiple options. They got to beat your stick, your feet, your body. They have to play at a higher speed, because now there's pressure on them to do it at speed with a back check. So really work on talking to your D about gapping up, keeping their gap, because it's to their advantage. So where does it happen? Typically happens at the offensive, starts in the offensive zone at the offensive blue line. You set your gap there. You can set your gap when you're joining the rush. And I also think you kind of set your gap off transition. So anytime there's a neutral zone regroup, you have an opportunity to set your gap there too. What does great gap do? Keeps your shots against down, in my opinion, for the most part, your chances against. So a great gap is usually between 18 to 24 shots against, good gap between 25 to 29 shots against, and a bad gap is around 30 shots against. All right. So anytime we see a game 30 plus shots, first thing I'm looking at is our rushes against. I want to see how our gaps were, how we were there, and usually we can break that down. That'll be the first thing that I hit with our defensemen come practice. Defensemen, remember, defensemen are playing the attackers. They're not playing us. With a great gap, stick, and position, we're dictating where the play is headed. Too many times we think that just because a team has the puck, that means they're going to pick and choose what they do. Well, that is true. They're going to pick if they're going to attack you with possession or dump pucks. But depending on what we do as defensemen, we can influence forwards on where we want them to go and what we want them to do with it. And that's critical in today's game. And that shows hockey sense by using good stick, good positioning, and forcing opposition into areas they don't want to be in, and ultimately to give up possession. The stuff that I got here, the shots against and playing the attackers, that's stuff that I was fortunate enough to learn from one of my dad's assistant coaches a few years ago in St. John was Paul Boutlier, and a former NHL player, and he's spoken at many conferences. So like I said earlier, there's going to be stuff in here that you see that you might have saw at other conferences, information. It's all part of the experience for me anyways. I'm learning from those guys, just like hopefully there's something in here you're learning from me, but I use their information daily with our teams. So I'm not afraid, even in a presentation with our players, to give credit to other coaches, obviously, that have been around with a lot more experience than I have. And I think players respect that too. And they understand that we don't have all the answers, but they appreciate the fact that we're willing to go look for them to help them improve their game. So set in your gap at the offensive blue line. I might refer to it as OBL. Sometimes I shorten it up. It's important that you go over that with your team as well. Get verbiage out of the way so guys are used to what you're talking about. But where defensemen will lose their gap on that offensive blue line, in my opinion, is they'll become flat-footed, or they go to the other direction. They overskate with multiple crossovers and create a big gap, or they play back on their heels. Sorry, I got a spelling error there on heels, but yeah, they back off on their heels and they create that soft gap we talked about earlier. So ways you can work to improve that gap is confidence. Give them the confidence. Push them in practice to take more ice. Their offensive zone reads. Can they count to 5? If they can count to 5, they can keep the opposition 5 players on the ice in front of them. They'll know how tight to get their gap started. Their angles, their edges as well. So right here, we're going to jump into the clips. Now, 2 guys that I have a lot of clips on are playing in the American Hockey League. I chose, instead of doing our own team clips, I took 2 players that I've worked with over my career. Guillaume Brisebois, we call him Breezer, who was a mid-round pick to the Vancouver Canucks when I was with Bathurst. He was an 18-year-old captain for us there for Mario Pouliot. He's played NHL games. He's in Utica. He's number 55 on the white team. And later on, we'll get into other clips with Alex Alexiev. He was in Red Deer my first year here. He was a 19-year-old first-round pick. With Alex, he's a player that was drafted before I came here, same as Guillaume. Both players developed under other coaching staffs. But you know what? I wanted to use guys that I worked with to see if the details that I was pushing at my level were still applicable at their level, or what I thought was helping them develop. Do I see those in their game? And that's why I wanted to pull out these clips. So these clips are a little bit longer than I would typically have with the individual if I was going to talk to Breezer about this. But why I did it a little bit longer, I want you to see maybe the sequence involved, I guess you would call it, and also put some key points on how we can create offense away from the puck and do some things and help our Ds develop the modern defenseman as a puck mover and a joiner, without thinking strictly offense and leading the rush. So just to start, we have number 55 right here, Breezer. He's right in front of the net. He'll be the D2. So I'll guide this through on the monitor, and just to speed up the clip so we can get through the presentation. So right here, Breezer's got his man net front. He's in defensive zone positioning. All right. All these clips are pretty much going to be positive. It's not my place to correct any of these guys. They have their own coaching staffs for that. They're at an elite level, and it's not my job to correct them, in my opinion. I'm using these clips to show some examples, but it's not a correcting thing. But there are areas inside of the clip that I might give them feedback if I was working with them on my team. So right here, I know in Bathurst, we used to do multiple breakout drills where we would move pucks, and then we would have D2 joining off that strong side post in the soft ice, looking for that defenseman breakout you see happen more and more often. But we were really hard on the details with our defensemen. We wanted them to stay below the puck. We wanted them to come up in the middle of the ice. And the reasons for that is if there was any types of turnovers, any problems here, when those pucks turned over, we were in a great position to defend. We were in the middle of the ice. We weren't outside the dodge trying to get back to the middle. We were defending the best ice first. So when we look at this, we see Breezer wanting to join and add. He's joining to be that D2 outlet. He's below the puck. He's in the middle of the ice. If a forechecker gets a stick on it, it's a broken stick for a pass, who knows? And the puck ends up right here. At least we're still in position to defend. That's a good detail. That's a good habit. He's up. He gets it. Every time, like I heard some NHL coaches talk. They talk about strides change the picture of the game, which I totally agree with. As he's striding and attacking, he's looking to be a moving option. So he moves the puck here, gets it in the forward's hands quickly. A phrase that I like to use is be a mover and a joiner. You don't want to lead the rush. You want to move it. You want to join. You want to support. So he moves it quickly, and now he lets the play develop. He reads that he's not an on-man situation. There's a good chance that he's not going to be a scoring threat. But he also sees they have 5 defenders in black here below him. So he's able to creep up. He can count to 5. He can creep up on the highest guy, which is 88, and start to get a tight gap. Although he's also wanting to create offense, we see here, puck carrier, most teams, you see this often, F1 with the puck, F2 driving to the net, F3 off the second post, and D is sliding into F4 ice. So we have a diamond here. He's at the top of the diamond. So he's in good offensive positioning, even though he knows he's not going to get a puck. But he's also in great defensive positioning because he's got a tight gap on their highest guys. There's nobody behind him because he can count to 5. Nobody's behind him. That means that they're all right. So he can gap up on the top guys. We see here he follows it up. Everybody stops. He stays above his man. And then he just pivots and he backs out. Why he's backing out here, he's shrinking down because he sees a battle. If that puck squirts out, he wants to be right in this winger's hip pocket. Stick length away, keeps pucks alive offensively. That's a defenseman contributing to offense, or that's his intention. All right? The puck doesn't pop out. It comes up the wall. Now he's shrinking back down. He's seeing the battle. That's a read. That's a good read for younger defensemen to understand. Too many times we get young defensemen, not just we here, but I just mean we as coaches work with young defensemen. That puck gets in the corner, they stop right at the blue line like it's novice hockey pitcher day because they're a defenseman. They have to be on the blue line. They have to be close to the net. Meanwhile, the puck turns over. In 88, if Breezer's on the blue line here, he's got 20, 30 feet of ice to create gap on. All right? Now, Breezer's down here. He's a stick and a half length away. Once that battle starts, if that puck wants to pop out, he's still tightening his gap. Now, it doesn't pop out, so his team gets it. What does he want to do? He wants to expand the zone. So think of an accordion. When it's a battle in the corner and you see their numbers, you can shrink down and close that accordion tight, and you want to get on top of their man. Once you get possession, you want to expand that accordion and create as much zone as you can, so then the defenders have to work to get tight to you, and that's what's going to create lanes. So we see here, the accordion's basically closed. All right, there's not a lot of space. But once 55 pulls out, Breezer pulls back, and we see 88 and everybody else open up like the accordion. Now you can start to see some lanes start to open up and some cycles develop. So we see a little cycle here. Breezer dives back door. All right, the forwards attack down as well. So now they have 4 guys below the dot. Breezer's wide open back door. He doesn't get a pass. That's fine. That happens all the time. Forward doesn't see him. Instead of hanging out, another important thing. We talk about this with defensemen often. Get in, make your play, and get out. You can't always trust forwards to have the patience to cover for you for a long point of time. So you want to get in, get out as quickly as you can. All right. So he gets in, he gets out, he's back, he's in position, he's above the play, he's above the play, he's surfing. It's really important. If you look at these clips and the next clips, he's not standing still, he's not flat-footed. He's gliding, his feet are moving, he's using his edges to glide, short strides, but he's always moving. He's trying to be an option, but more importantly, as we see at the end of the clip here, the puck switches sides and it comes out to the top of the circle. His man has the puck. Breezer is now halfway between the top of the circles and the dot. He knows his partner has the threat over here. All right. Now he's able to have a good gap. His feet are moving. It's one crossover. It's a push, stick on puck in the lane, create a turnover. All right. But it's because he's able to gap up and not stand on the blue line throughout that whole offensive sequence that he feels comfortable pushing and setting his gap. He's not starting on the blue and skating backwards. He's coming 5-6 feet in. Now, I should let you know, Breezer's an elite skater, all right? He's an elite skater at the major junior level. He's a very good skater at pro. You're going to have some players on your team, 1 through 6, as much as we love them all to be elite skaters, they're not going to be elite skaters. But they're going to have to find, maybe they don't come this low. Maybe they just want to get their feet going to the first sign right here and just get a little quick pivot and then move. But it's important, get them to move forward at least a stride or two to set their gap. Don't just pull back right away. If you have to pull back right away, you might as well turn forwards and sprint back hard, get above position. So this will be Alex Alexiev, and he's number 27. He also played for me in Red Deer. I talked about him a little bit earlier. And we'll see him get up. And again, it's about joining the play. So he makes a great read right here. He is coming up into our screen. He's right here in the picture. He's joining the rush as a weak side defenseman. All right, and here's his read. He's joining, and he sees that it's an even man attack. There's 1, 2, he's back here, 3 versus 1, 2, 3. Probably if he was a betting man, it's going to be tough for him to get a high quality scoring opportunity and an even rush. So what does he do? Picks his battle and decides just to take ice, but he still comes down and sets his gap low. He's almost touching the top of the circles, just like Breezer. Sets his ice and let the forwards go to work while he's checking his shoulder and counting numbers on the ice. He only reads 3 in front of him here. So if you see, he's got his head turned around. He's checking. You can see his eyes. He's trying to find 2 other black jerseys to count to 5 to see how high or how low he can be in the zone, because he wants to be above his 5 checks. So now he sees there's 5 guys below him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Watch Alex here. He takes his ice, again, constantly moving. He shrinks down, sees possession, looks to make a play. Now he's in the middle of the ice. He's still inside the dots. Forward makes a good read. Sees he's wide open on the weak side of the ice, tries to throw it towards the net. It goes off the defenseman right here, and the rebound comes up. Alex, looking for a rebound, has to stop and get on his horse. But because he's above his check, because he can count 4 guys below him, he knows he's okay. His partner's got this guy. It might look a little hairy to the fans, but it's still a one-on-one situation. He's sprinting back, checking the puck, pivots, realizes there's still guys above him, doesn't like his foot speed, and he's back to support his partner, and they're still okay. So all I'm trying to say is, don't be so strong-willed that you don't allow your defensemen to sneak in a little bit from the top of the blue line just to set their gap. Not necessarily sneaking in all the time to create offense, but more importantly, to be great defensively and start setting your gap too. Another thing that we see with younger defensemen, or I should say, is defensemen following their passes. So they follow their passes after they make a breakout pass, and a lot of times it goes up the wall. And here's a detail that you want to work on as you get older. There's a fumbled puck here. He's under pressure. He gets rid of it quickly. All right. So it's chipped out in the neutral zone. Some young defensemen, what we see is they want to follow the puck up this outside lane. Work with your defensemen, watch them, let them know, remind them in practice, remind them in games. Don't follow your pass, get inside the dots. You always want to defend from inside the dots, and the more that you can own that interior of the ice for your team in general, the better it is. So here's Alex, he's chasing his man, good positioning. He's off his inside shoulder, protecting the middle, but you can see his toes, and he's gradually following his man up tight enough that he has gap, but he wants to work inside the dots so he can surf him over an angle. All right, so I call angling surfing. When defensemen gap up and they don't pinch straight on, they make an angle pinch. I call it a surf. You kind of surf them, you ride the wave. So right here, Alex gets over, he angles, he surfs, he creates another loose puck, and then he's right back to support any type of puck. But if he would have came up from outside the dots in this situation, he'd be coming straight at the puck carrier, and that chip out, his toes would be pointed the wrong way, and he'd be in a vulnerable position. Right now, he's angling, and that gives him an opportunity to retreat on any chips. All right, so it's really important. So little things like that, coming up inside the dots, those little details. Again, we talk about more often than not now getting defensemen activated and helping with offense. Those things help with offense because you get pucks back quicker, the better the details are. I'm going to quickly get through stick positioning because I think it's extremely important. So with stick positioning, other than your skates, it's your number one tool for your defenseman. One hand to defend, two hands or influence, two hands to battle. So I like to tell defensemen, get one hand on your stick to defend, two hands to battle. Show your watch. I'm going to show you a couple clips. Maybe in the questions, I can show you when the video is on me, I can give you a better demonstration. You want deceptive strikes. I started saying it. I probably heard it somewhere, or I just kept saying it so much, I kind of made it into a little phrase with our defensemen, but I tell them constantly, touch the puck, touch the man. Touch the puck with stick on puck with your stick, then touch his body, then body on body. Use your hand, touch the puck, touch the man. But you can't just chase the body. You don't want to look for that big hit because you're not going to disrupt pucks. You got to disrupt that puck first. That's your number one goal when creating contact. Disrupt that puck and then eliminate the player. Deny passing lanes and control hips. So it's tough to talk about sticks and great body positioning if you don't look at probably the best of my generation at doing this is Nick Lidstrom. So when we watch number 5 here, attack his clips, watch his stick positioning, watch his hands, watch his stick blade. Is it turned over? Is he using a windshield wiper where it's coming across the front of his body? Or is it a poke and a jab? Is his wrist turned over so he's mimicking showing him a watch, the face of his watch on his wrist? Or is his palm up and he's showing him maybe like the under palm of his wrist, the bottom of his hand? And I'll let this play through. It's about 30 seconds. Right there's a great clip. He threatens the puck. Sorry, I say I let it play through. I do this with our team as well. He threatens the puck. He shows him his watch, so you see it. His stick blade is up. His hand extends. And now he's making him come all the way around him. There's no passing threat. So by keeping his stick this far out in front of him, it makes the forward skate around the obstacle. If there's a player close to him, he won't keep it extended for that period of time due to the fact that skilled guys nowadays are going to start taking advantage of the holes that you create. That's why you want to jab it out there. If you hold it out there and there's passing options close, good players will attack your triangle, attack your feet. As you see, when the passing option gets closer, he brings the stick back and changes the triangle, and then he's out and he's stick on puck and he denies the passing lane. Here's the clip. Oh, sorry about that. Here's the clip right here we talked about earlier. I don't know why the pause button would keep doing that, so I'm just going to run through it like I was the other clips. When it comes to touch the puck, touch the man. So you see him out of the corner battle here. Instead of just chasing the forward to drive him through the boards, you see he gets one hand on his stick here, jabs it out, stick on puck, creates an awkward situation, a challenging part there for the forward. The forward now has to let go of his stick and protect with one hand. So now he's at a disadvantage because he can't control the puck like he wants to. He has to only use his top hand while he's shielding the puck with his bottom hand. And if you even look, he does a great job of lifting the player's stick with one hand. So he touches the puck, and now with his body, he touches the man, and he sets his pin. But first he attacks the puck with a good stick, puts the player off balance and not in a comfortable position, and then he attacks the body. And right here, sometimes when you're using a player like Nick Lidstrom, you want to come in with some current players. So Jonathan Toews, he's out there. So you see Lidstrom again, attack his stick, boom, threaten the puck once, threaten the puck twice, and now connect and get inside of his triangle. So this is back in early 2000s, I think, and we're talking and showing clips on how to work inside triangles. If you'd like some fun, jump onto YouTube. Watch him from the 90s, early 90s, and although the game's different, and even ask your defensemen. I did that this year. They really enjoyed it. They said they did anyways. They saw the old type of sticks and gear, and they had a couple laughs. But once we broke down the details, the game hasn't changed that often. And I was fortunate to coach Paul Coffey's son, Blake, in Corpus Christi as well. And the one thing that he said to me, one of the many things that I'll never forget is, in 100 years, the game hasn't changed. Teams that win the front of the nets, the blue lines, they're the teams that are going to end up winning the majority of the games. If you own the front of the net, the blue lines, and I'm sorry, the middle of the ice, you have great opportunity to win. It's been like that for 100 years. It's not going to change. If you watch the details that Nick Lidstrom had when he played in the 90s, those details, they're even more so important today in the game, I find, with creating defensemen. So what does a not so good stick on puck look like, or a bad one? Again, I took this clip off YouTube. It's a great source to go on for coaches that maybe don't have the data library that other coaches have at other levels. So it's a great opportunity. Just hop onto YouTube and you can pull stuff up. So this was, I believe it was Scott Stevens going through it. But if you watch the Pittsburgh defenseman here, I talk about getting small, playing small earlier. He's got two hands on his stick here. His stick is not on puck. It's almost like he's getting ready to play one-touch passing here. But look at all the angles that are opened up between the legs, all around his body, all right? And the attacking forward is close to him because there's no extension here, all right? There's no threat of the puck. So he's able to do whatever he wants with that puck. You see a drag, all right? And with the YouTube clip, they do a great job. They're better than I am at NBC, I guess, at highlighting the sticks and showing a few good visuals for your players. Is the stick should be on puck. That's what they're saying in the video. But primarily, he ends up shooting it through, and the defenseman just becomes a very good screen. That's Marc-Andre Fleury. There's not a lot of guys on a snapshot, top of the circles, on a clear shot that they're going to score that on Marc-Andre Fleury. So I put that one on the defenseman in terms of just not having that stick on puck, all right, threatening. You're playing small with two hands on your stick. Next clip here. This is going to be Breezer, and there's going to be two clips. You'll see it both first period, all right, just different times in the period, but they're almost identical clips. There's a quick transition, and boom, right away, he's pivoting. He sets his gap. He finds his man. If you watch, turns his stick over and shows good watch, and now that stick is going right on the puck's eyes. It's right on the puck. That's what the puck sees. He wants the puck to see his blade. He doesn't need his blade. pointed at the forward's crest or his skates. He needs that puck to have to touch his blade before it goes to the net. At this distance, you can angle your stick. The more talented the player, the higher level, the different the angle, whatever. You don't want to angle it into your own net. That's obvious, but you can get that angle. You can push pucks out of play, or at least you're disrupting. So right there, he disrupts the play. It ends up in the corner. Great stick. Again, another transition. It swings up. He steps back, stick up, head up. Look at his posture. His body positioning's good. He pivots out. But if you notice, when he's leading with this stick here, he's not lunging and off balance. He still has great balance. It's just part of his pivot. So if you want to talk about high skill development, a great skill to work on for any defenseman, we work on it a lot, is just backward skating pivot. And you know what? Maybe it's a midget defenseman. He's a really good skater. His pivots are great. Okay. Now pivot with a poke check. Do a few reps of those in your power skating. Pivot with a poke check. So it's all one motion. And you see that right there. But he's still strong. He's still balanced. But he shows his watch. You see the technical side of it. Right here, here's a 3-on-2. I only have a couple clips left. I'm just going to bounce through these as quickly as possible. Please bear with me. I apologize for stumbling around for the majority of this. Like I said, first time on the webinar side, and I'm kind of talking to my screen here. I'd rather feel the room out, but I'm trying to make do. So hopefully you're still with me. Right here, there's a quick transition. You see this happen often in games, obviously. D, move the puck up, forwards attack. Let's watch the defending D right here in black. And then we'll watch the two Utica and white defensemen. But if we watch this defenseman, he pivots right here, turns around. Now he's got two hands on a stick. As soon as he gets his head up, he gets his feet under him. Boom, there goes the stick out. There's his watch. You could see his watch. If he rolled up his sleeves, we'd see that Rolex right there from the Cleveland Monsters defenseman. And it's stick on puck, and he's threatening puck to keep that forward to the outside. He doesn't have two hands on his stick. He's not using a windshield wiper where the stick's over here and he's sweeping across. He's got his stick out, and he's threatening the puck. You see it, it's very good there. Now, the angle changes a little bit, so he's forced to change it to his backhand, but he's poking, and now he creates transition. So here comes transition. Now black has it. If we go back in the clip as this attack was happening, we watch white. You can see in the bottom right corner a helmet right there. That's a strong side defenseman. So again, not standing on the blue line. He's coming down, almost touches the tops of the circle, pivots off the blue line. He took his ice. Now he's in positioning. Okay, so off of this, we got a 3-on-2 coming back, minimum, maybe a 4-on-2. But look at this gap by this defenseman and watch his partner. His partner has gotten way up ice as well, and they both set a terrific gap. So now this 3-on-2 is the offensive team is on one side of the blue line, and you have defenders inside the red line. That's a tough play. And I know we work a lot in skill development on making plays in small areas. There's a reason why you work on it a lot for offensive skill. Is because it's really hard to do. We, as defenders, we want to put those players. So these two defenders, like we talked about earlier, are dictating the rush. This player's on his backhand side or on his forehand coming up the boards. So because he's on his backhand and we have good gap, we have great alignment here, this defenseman saying, okay, if you want to give it to your buddy, we got him covered. You're going to have to make a great pass here, and then he, under pressure, is going to have to make another great pass to beat us because we have such tight pressure on you. We have an extended stick that's helping deny this lane. So all these two defensemen, even though it's an odd man rush, they're making it painfully obvious that unless this guy wants to make a high risk play in a dangerous area at the red line and the blue line where most coaches despise turnovers, I repeat, despise turnovers in that area due to transition, he knows he's going to force this player to make a simple read and chip that puck and give up possession. So what happens? He stays tight. He's got great positioning, outside shoulder to inside shoulder, good alignment, great gap, stick on puck. That soft chip happens. Look what happens. 88 doesn't want to deal with it. He exits the zone. It's a recovery. It's a breakout. That was a 3-on-2 from the top of the circles, from the blue line, that ends up in a dump puck recovery and transition the other way. All because a strong side defenseman gaps up and has great details and habits. And that's what we're trying to promote inside of the team. So now they dump that puck, and White gets the puck on his forehand, wheeling the net. Now they're creating offense. So you're helping the defensemen be more modern. You're creating offense by teaching them those basic things, because those are the things that we're teaching them at the major junior level: gap, positioning, stick on puck, and we're just reminding them. And the best players, in my opinion, are players that can see it. It's a very good thing. It's a very good aspect of hockey sense, is being able to see something and then apply it immediately. And some players take more time than others, and that's fine. It's just a developable skill that you work on continuously. So the final part of this, again, trying to get through it as quickly as possible, is the information. And I'm not going to get into this. I'm going to give my email address to Wes, to everybody else, and run through the information side of it at a later date when it comes to tracking. Anybody who saw the presentation, if you'd like to know more about the tracking stuff that I do, I'm willing to go over that one-on-one, or if you want to email me, we could set up the same kind of thing. Wes has my email. I'd love to do that more, just because of time constraints. I thought it was important to show you how I kind of break down and what I'm looking for on those details. But I'm more than happy to talk hockey, especially with what's going on in today's day and age, and helping through some tracking stuff with anybody that would like. Basically, I learned, I took it from Ralph Kruger, and he said the learn and confirm phrase. And that's all I'm doing with tracking. When I'm looking at video, or I'm looking at analytics, or I'm even watching NHL games, I'm either learning or I'm confirming. Am I teaching the same stuff that's happening in the NHL and the AHL? Am I teaching the details or just the skill? What am I learning, or what am I confirming from what I'm watching or the data that I'm getting? Again, what's important to you to track? If you have a team of 6'6", old school, tough, rugged defensemen that maybe their best quality isn't skating, are you trying to get them to be Quinn Hughes? So know your team, know your identity, know your culture, know what you're working with, and then apply that comparison, and you'll see greater success quicker, in my opinion, with the development. And then again, the feedback back to relationships. Different players need different messages. I thought Wes did an unbelievable presentation in his, when he talked about the mental side of the game. And I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't pretend to be, but the more I can help relate to the players, the better. And things to take into account, factors to take into account, is their age, their recent play, off-ice stressors, confidence, maybe even where the player feels he fits in the team. That's where you got to take that into consideration too. Are you piling up on top of that player that might be in and out of the lineup? Are you looking for positive things? Are you catching them doing it right and let them know about it? So that's where I am. I put up for a later date. If you want to look through it, you might not be able to understand some of the stuff, but it's just an example. I didn't use this specific one. I just kind of thought how you could track some of the stuff that we just looked at in the video. Chances against, or CE, would be controlled entries, UE, uncontrolled, DE, denied entries, OMR, odd man rush. They're just abbreviations. It's just my own lingo to help me get through it. But if I was looking at a team, or my team, or Breezer, or Alex, maybe I put them on the first pair, and then I put my other pairs below. So when I track their stuff, I know who their matchups were against. So maybe a third pair defenseman, if I did it just numerically, is going to say, oh, I had the same numbers as the first pair defenseman. Well, yeah, but there's a reason why, because you played against maybe lesser competition or whatever. And finally, with practice, try to implement the game situations as much as you can in your drill decisions. I like to say, as an assistant coach, when I'm not running the drill, the head coach's job is to yell because he's trying to get the attention of the team. And I don't mean yelling at players, I mean yelling to players in terms of like even just giving feedback. I don't yell at guys when I'm not running the drill, or yell to guys, I should say. I whisper to them, and all I mean by that is you're in line, you're whispering to the defenseman as it's going along. Hey, show your watch. That last 2 one-on-one, why'd you get beat? Oh, yeah, I know, my stick. Hey, back to your details. Just get back, follow that little checklist, show your watch, line up your inside shoulder to their outside shoulder. All the little things you go through as a coach, whisper that to them in line. Just keep it constant. And you'll see that pretty soon you're not going to have to give that feedback. Reward what you want, repeat it. When you see stuff and you see it done well, let them know about it. There's a good chance they'll keep repeating it if they know they're going to be rewarded. Whole part, taking advantage of minutes on the ice. I know back in Moncton, New Brunswick, running ice times, the price of ice per hour is extremely expensive. It's almost at like $7 a minute or $5 a minute. You don't want to waste time in minor hockey or summer development or anything. So take advantage of every minute you can. Have guys drinking water at the board. Don't give them a separate break to go drink water. It's just burning daylight. I really like the whole part where you take a skill, you develop it with lots of touches. You use that in your practice plan, maybe into the whole situation with the 5-on-5, and then you go to the part back to getting those touches on it again with maybe no pressure, just so they can get back to feeling good about themselves. So I had a couple other videos. We're running a little late. This one, I'll finish with this one. I'm not sure if there's any sound on your end. I hope there is. Cappy, can you let me know if the sound works, please?
Problem.
Thanks, bud. And as you know, on TSN, there's been a couple Canada Cups going on. So I saw this clip the other day, and it was actually on Twitter. Ryan Whitney from Spit and Chicklets. This is a 2-on-0 because the defenseman is doing absolutely nothing. And
on the top now, leaving it there. And Bork cleared it, and here's Gretzky with Lemieux. 2-on-1 break. Gretzky to Lemieux. Scores! I don't know what Yellow Shaken thought, but he's got the two greatest forwards in the game today coming at him. What are you going to do? Not much you can do. Watch it go by.
So I can't hear the volume on my side of it, but I hope I didn't cut it too early. At the end of the day, regardless where the details that you want to put in as a coach and what you want to accomplish, sometimes you're just going to end up seeing Gretzky and Lemieux, and it doesn't matter what you teach them, it's going in the back of your net anyway. So I hope you got something from this presentation. Just in closing, before we get to the questions, I know Cappy brought it up, and other people did as well with the food bank, an unbelievable charity for a lot of people, and I'm a big believer in it. My family and I each donate constantly to the food bank. But I just want to give you a little bit of background on me. I'm from Nova Scotia originally. I agreed to do this because I wanted to help coaches, but to be honest, I was a little apprehensive of it due to, I think there's so many great coaches out there. And I learned from so many guys that I learn every day that you don't have all the answers. And again, it was really humbling for me to go back to look at some of the stuff I had done before and what I would have changed and helped those players back then. So I didn't want to come across as somebody as a know-it-all. I hope I could help somebody that's working with younger players. But I also said I could do this and maybe help support a good cause. So my old teammate from Bantam AAA, when I played in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia for Pictou County, is a guy named Josh Jenkins. He's a very close friend of mine. We went to high school together, and his sister, Alana, pictured on the right, was one of the victims of the Nova Scotia massacre that happened in April back home. And she was a prison guard with her husband, Sean. And There's a GoFundMe campaign. It's been approved by, I saw it on CBC that it was approved. Josh's brother also sent, or Josh, Elena's brother, sent me the link as well. And all the proceeds are going to go towards their 2 children, Sean's 2 children and their special granddaughter. So if you enjoyed the presentation, if you didn't enjoy it, but you're a good person and you just want to donate, anything can help. It's for 3 little girls there that lost their parents. So anything would help, and it's all appreciated. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll get this screen share off for you.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much, Brad. That was fantastic. Again, we got if you got a couple minutes still, we can get through a couple quick questions here. We don't want to keep everybody too long, but I think there's a couple of quick ones here. One of them is when teaching players to set their gap, what key words are you using? And how do you help players to trust their own skating speed so they can keep a tight gap?
Yeah, again, like I think it's important to differentiate between feedback in game and feedback in practice. In practice, I might be a little bit more technical. Get up, work your edges. I use the way, it's funny because when I look back, I kind of laugh at myself, but I repeat the same words often. Get up, move your feet. You're constantly trying to get those defensemen to get up ice. If you've ever had the privilege to see Paul Boutlier's presentation on developing defensemen, I was fortunate. He sat with me a long time. He used to work with my dad, and I learned a lot from him. And the teaching aspect that I really like to help with the setting the gap is if you can get your defensemen to count to 5, you should be able to get them to understand how to get up to set their gap. What he means by that is when you follow the play up the ice, as soon as the play starts going towards the other team's net, as a defenseman, you scan the ice, count to 5. As soon as you see 5 colored jerseys on the other team, so we'll use the breeze ball clip, you see 5 black jerseys in front of you, you know you're safe. There's nobody behind you. Get up right in the hip pocket of that last player because you know you're not going to get caught from behind. All right? If you count 4, you better check your shoulder and make sure your partner has them because there's somebody on the ice that's not inside of your viewpoint, and you got to make sure your partner has them. Because if you check your shoulder, your partner doesn't have them, well, that means he's probably behind you. And if there's a transition puck, you're going to probably be the one at fault. So you might have to come back and pull out of the rush. But you check your shoulder, you see everybody in front of you, you should have the confidence to move your feet. Lastly, Troy Smith made a great point. I asked him a couple years when I became a head coach. I believe he was in Kitchener at the time. And I asked him for advice. And one of the comments that he made was great was, depending on the style of game that you play, if you're a hard matching coach, then your defensemen are constantly worried about who they're on the ice against. So they're looking at the bench to come off. And then they're between 2 decisions, whether to get up in the play or to stay back. They're looking at the bench. You need them to be able to see it and go. Just see it and go. Think fast, play fast. So finally, I guess the last piece that I could give you is I always go back to Mario Pouliot on that. And you don't want the player to be caught between 2 decisions. You want to work with that player so there's one decision and they're off to the races. You see players that play slow, it's usually because they're caught between 2 decisions. So when I see a player hesitate, he comes to the bench, a defenseman, I'll ask him, what'd you see there? And it's funny, you'll be surprised. The more questions you ask, sometimes it's hard not to smirk on the bench. Oh, you saw that? Like, I didn't know if I should go there or I should pull back here. Man, trust your instinct. Trust your instinct. And if your instinct's wrong, we're going to work on it so your instincts become better. So when you do trust it, you're making the right play the higher percentage time. I hope that helps. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's a great answer. So I think on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Anyone who did have questions, like Brad said, he's going to be able to send out his information to you because he loves talking hockey and be able to answer anything that we didn't get to today. So thank you very much for your time, Brad. Thank you very much for everyone who participated and who attended. And just remember, there's one more this Thursday May the 14th, and that's Josh Hopmer, mental performance consultant with Hockey Canada, the Saskatoon Blades. That's 1 p.m. Eastern time, so sign up for that one. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day, Brad, and thanks again, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.